Hello there, and welcome to Silent Footsteps. Wherever you are right now, I invite you to pause, to take a breath, and to allow the stillness to settle around you. Perhaps you are lying in bed, your body already heavy with the promise of sleep. Perhaps your eyes are closing even as you listen, the weight of the day slowly dissolving. Or perhaps you are simply resting, allowing your imagination to drift. Wherever you may be, this is your time, a gentle time, a quiet time, a time not for rushing, not for proving, not for noise, but for wonder. And tonight, in this quiet journey, we will step softly into one of the most mysterious places on earth. A circle of ancient stones standing tall against the winds of time. Stones that have watched centuries come and go. Stones that seem almost alive, as if whispering secrets too old to be remembered. Yes, tonight we ask together, what if Stonehenge was built by a forgotten people? What if? Already the mind begins to wander. Already we feel curiosity stirring. These stones, massive, silent, eternal. Who placed them here? How? Why? And could it be that their makers were not the people we think we know, but another people altogether? A people lost to history, erased from memory, yet leaving behind these giant wordless monuments as their only voice. For a moment, let us imagine. You are standing at Stonehenge. It is late evening. The sky is washed in soft grey with streaks of fading gold them all. The air is cool, the grass damp beneath your feet. Around you the great stones rise like ancient guardians, their surfaces weathered, their shapes rough, yet somehow perfect. You run your hand across one of them, and you feel the coldness of ages. The rough texture carries the weight of thousands of years. You breathe deeply, and you realise that this place has outlived empires. It has outlived kings and kingdoms, and it will outlive us too. And in that moment, you cannot help but wonder, who were they? Who were the hands that raised these stones? Who were the eyes that gazed upon them when they were new? Who were the voices that spoke as they planned this great circle, aligning it with the sun and the stars? The mystery is so deep that even silence seems to ask the question. Tonight, together, we will not seek to prove. We will not try to answer with certainty. Instead, we will simply wonder. We will imagine. We will allow the mind to wander down forgotten paths. We will let curiosity lead us like a lantern in the dark. Because wonder itself is a kind of prayer, and imagination is a way of touching what cannot be seen. So ask yourself again, softly, gently, what if Stonehenge was built by a forgotten people? What if it was the echo of a civilization long gone, swallowed by time, their names never written, their stories never told? What if these stones are the last memory of a people who once walked the earth, lived, loved, built and dreamed, and then disappeared, leaving only these silent giants to remind us that they were here? What if? And as you listen tonight, allow yourself to drift. Allow the images to form in your mind. Ancient landscapes, silent horizons, a people whose footsteps have faded, but whose work still stands. Let the stillness of this moment guide you gently deeper and deeper until the noise of the world fades away and only the soft voice of history remains. You are here, we are here, the stones are waiting, and across the quiet of time the question lingers, what if? Close your eyes now if you haven't already. Feel the room around you. Notice the stillness. Perhaps you hear only the soft hum of the night, perhaps the quiet breath of your own body. Let that stillness wrap around you like a blanket gently placed across your shoulders. Now, imagine yourself standing on a wide plain, far away from the noise of cities, far away from the rush of time. The air is cool and damp. The grass sways softly beneath your feet. A faint mist drifts across the field, curling around the stones that rise ahead of you. It is Stonehenge. The stones stand tall, arranged in their circle, leaning against one another like ancient companions. Some lie broken on the ground as if tired from their long watch. Others rise proudly silhouetted against the horizon, their edges sharp against the fading light of dusk. The silence here is not an empty silence. It is a silence that feels alive. a silence filled with whispers, the whisper of the wind as it moves through the grass, the whisper of distant birds returning to their nests, the whisper of your own heartbeat, steady, patient. And somewhere in that silence, as though hidden within the stones themselves, there is the faintest sense of memory, as if these ancient guardians are holding secrets just out of reach. Take a slow breath. Notice how the air feels cool in your lungs. As you breathe out, imagine your breath joining the mist, becoming part of this timeless landscape. Above you, the sky stretches wide. The stars are only beginning to appear, one by one like lanterns lit across the heavens. Their light is faint but eternal, the same light that shone upon these stones when they were first raised thousands of years ago. And as you stand in this place, in this moment, you feel the weight of time. The grass beneath your feet grows and dies and grows again. The seasons turn, empires rise and fall, generations are born, live their lives and pass away. And yet the stones remain, watching, waiting. You're not here to solve them, you're not here to conquer their mystery. You're here simply to listen, to wonder, to let your imagination wander softly like footsteps in sand. Perhaps you begin to hear sounds that are not really there. The faint thud of wooden hammers striking stone, the creak of ropes pulled tight, the call of voices carried on the wind. For a moment it is as if time has thinned, and you are standing not only in the present, but also in the shadow of the past. The air thickens with memory. You imagine the builders, whoever they were, moving across this field. Perhaps they wore simple garments of wool and leather. Perhaps their hands were rough from labour, their faces tanned by the sun. Perhaps they worked together in silence, or perhaps they sang as they hauled the stones, the rhythm of their voices echoing across the plain. And as you watch, you realise something humbling. We do not know their names. We do not know their words. We do not know their dreams. All we know are these stones, silent, solid, eternal, and that is enough. Because in this silence, in this stillness, there is a kind of peace, a reminder that the world is vast, that history is deep, that human memory is fragile, but that the earth remembers. The earth always remembers. It remembers through the curve of a hill, through the shadow of a ruin, through the weathering of stone, through the soil that holds broken shards of pottery or a forgotten footprint hardened in clay. And tonight, here in this moment, it remembers through Stonehenge. So allow yourself to rest within this memory. Let the silence of this place surround you. Let the soft mist cool your thoughts. Let the endless sky open above you. You are standing in a place where time itself feels thin, where the distance between past and a present is only a breath. And still, across that distance, the question lingers, what if? What if these stones were not raised by the people we know, but by another people altogether? A people whose names are gone, whose stories are erased, yet who live on in these towering monuments of silence. What if? Do not rush to answer. Do not rush at all. Let the question rest, like a feather drifting on air. Let it guide you deeper into the calm, because tonight we are not here to prove, we are not here to argue, we are not here to solve, we are here to wonder, to imagine, to dream. And in that gentle dream the stones begin to speak, not with words but with presence, with scent, with the steady, patient reminder that time is long and memory is fragile, and that sometimes the greatest mysteries are not meant to be solved, only honoured. So let the mood settle, let the quiet deepen, feel the coolness of the earth beneath your feet, hear the soft whisper of the wind, smell the dampness of grass and stone. The night is falling, the stars are opening above you, and Stonehenge, ancient and unyielding, stands before you, waiting as it always has. And you too are waiting for the story to unfold, for the mystery to deepen, for the question to rise again, softly, gently, like the breath of the earth itself. What if Stonehenge was built by a forgotten people? Imagine for a moment that the mist has lifted. The field lies open, wide and green, and the stones stand tall in the clear light of day. We step closer now as though moving gently through time, ready to glimpse the history that has been left behind. Stonehenge, a circle of massive stones, some standing upright, some fallen, some resting upon others like gateways of the past. Each one heavy, each one silent, each one older than the empires we know. Most scholars tell us that Stonehenge was built in stages, across many centuries. The earliest earthworks, they say, were raised more than 4,500 years ago. Imagine that number for a moment. 4.5 millennia. Empires had not yet risen in Greece. The pyramids of Egypt were still young. Great civilizations in Mesopotamia were thriving, but the world was not yet mapped, not yet connected. And here, in the green fields of what is now England, people were shaping something extraordinary. The first phase, they tell us, was not stone at all, but earth. A great circular ditch carved by hand using only antlers, bones and wooden tools. Within it a ring of holes, perhaps once holding wooden posts or smaller stones. Who dug this circle? Who first imagined it? We do not know, but we can almost picture them. Small groups of men and women working together, their voices carried on the wind. Children watching from the edge of the field. Fires burning at night. Rituals perhaps whispered beneath the moon. Centuries later the stones arrived. The smaller ones, called blue stones, were brought from far away, from the mountains of Wales, over 100 miles distant. Stop and imagine that journey. Great blocks of rock, each weighing several tons, somehow dragged, hauled or floated across rivers and land. It must have taken months, even years. Why bring them from so far when stones lay closer at hand? Some say the blue stones held special power, a healing quality, a sacred presence. Others say they were simply chosen for their beauty, but we cannot know for certain. Then came the great stones, the sarsens. These towering blocks, each as heavy as 20 or 30 tons, were hauled from the chalk hills not too far away. With ropes, with wooden rollers, with sheer human strength they were dragged across the land. Imagine the effort, imagine the unity it required, and slowly, slowly the circle took shape. Upright stones placed into the earth, great lintels lifted and set upon them, forming massive doorways of stone, some aligned with the rising of the sun on Midsummer's Day, others aligned with the sunset of the winter solstice. This was not chance, this was design, this was vision. But who were they, these builders? What were their names? What language did they speak? What prayers did they whisper? Here the silence grows heavier, for history does not tell us. They left no written records. They left no carved messages upon the stones, only the stones themselves. Archaeologists have uncovered fragments, animal bones, pottery, tools, traces of life scattered around the site. From these fragments, they imagine feasts, gatherings, rituals and ceremonies. Perhaps Stonehenge was a place of burial, for human remains have been found here too. Perhaps it was a temple of the sun, a place to mark the turning of the year. Perhaps it was both. Perhaps it was more. And yet despite centuries of study, the mystery endures. Because history as we know it is never complete. It is a patchwork, a fabric woven from fragments. Civilizations rise, flourish and vanish. Names are lost, stories are forgotten. Time covers all things with silence. And so the question remains, what if? What if the people who built Stonehenge were not the ancestors we imagine, but another people altogether? A people erased by time, unrecorded, unremembered. A people whose only surviving voice is this circle of stone. For even now, as we gaze upon it, Stonehenge does not feel ordinary. It does not feel like just another ruin, just another ancient site. It feels alive. It feels deliberate. It feels as though it was meant to last, as though it was meant to outlive the people who raised it. Picture the scene thousands of years ago. The sky is wide and cloudless. A group of men haul a stone across wooden rollers, shouting in rhythm as they pull. Women carry water, tending fires that crackle nearby. Children watch, their eyes wide with wonder. Elders stand apart, perhaps chanting, perhaps giving guidance. The stone moves slowly, inch by inch, until at last it reaches its resting place. A pit has been dug, deep and wide. Ropes are tied, levers are pieced. With one last great effort, the stone tilts, rises and settles into the earth. A roar of triumph echoes across the field. And yet, beyond the work, beyond the sweat and labour, lies something greater. Purpose, belief, vision. These were not stones raised for shelter. They were not walls for defense. They were something else, something higher, something that touched the sky. In this we are humbled, because we realize that even thousands of years ago, long before electricity, long before machines, long before maps of the world were drawn, human beings were dreaming great dreams. They were measuring the heavens. They were aligning stone with the path of the sun. They were building not just for themselves, but for eternity. And so, as we reflect upon this, we are reminded of a truth. Civilizations rise and fall, and the earth keeps memories hidden beneath its soil. Kings and kingdoms vanish. Names fade into dust. But stones endure. Stonehenge endures. And still, the mystery endures with it. Who were they? Who stood here before us? Who placed their hands upon these stones when they were new, when their surfaces were sharp, their edges fresh, their weight still a challenge against the earth? Who gazed upon the midsummer sunrise perfectly framed between these stones and felt a sense of awe? We cannot know for certain. And yet, as we ask, the question grows louder, echoing through time, whispering across the centuries. What if? What if Stonehenge was built not by the ancestors we imagine, but by a forgotten people? A people who left no written words, no carved signs, no trace of their language. A people whose existence is remembered only by these stones. And as the thought takes root, we begin to sense something profound. Because if such a people once lived, and once built, and once dreamed, then how many others might there have been? How many stories lie buried beneath the soil, waiting to be uncovered, waiting to be imagined? And so, as we stand at the edge of this ancient circle, feeling the wind brush against our face, hearing the quiet murmur of grass, watching the stones cast long shadows against the setting sun, we find ourselves not only in the presence of history, but also in the presence of mystery. And still, across the quiet of time, the question lingers, what if? And now, as we stand before the stones, as the evening deepens and the first stars appear above us, we return to the question that brought us here. What if Stonehenge was built by a forgotten people? Not the people whose remains archaeologists sometimes find. Not the ancestors we imagine, with their antler picks and their stone hammers. But another people. A people whose names have been lost, whose stories never reached us, whose memory slipped quietly beneath the waves of time. What if? The words are simple, but they open a door. They are not a statement, not a claim, not a proof. They are only an invitation, a key turning in a lock. And as the lock turns, a vast corridor of imagination opens before us. What if, long before the world as we know it, there lived a culture that dreamed of eternity? What if their wisdom was not written in books, but carved into landscapes, into earthworks, into stone? What if they measured not just seasons, but the very flow of the cosmos, aligning stones with stars, placing gateways where the sun would rise and fall? And what if Stonehenge is the last voice of this forgotten people still speaking to us in silence? Pause for a moment, let the idea sink in, let it grow. Perhaps these people were not so different from us. They loved. They worked. They dreamed. They looked up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond. They felt the warmth of the sun, the chill of winter, the mystery of death, the hope of renewal. They stood at the edge of life just as we do, asking softly into the night, why are we here? And perhaps for them, building in stone was an answer. Perhaps the raising of these monoliths was not just an act of engineering, but of prayer. Because stone endures, stone remembers, stone does not pass away like words spoken into the air. Stone does not crumble like parchment, does not burn like wood. Stone holds its place patiently across the centuries. What if they knew this? What if this forgotten people built Stonehenge as their message to time itself? A letter to the future written not in ink, but in granite and chalk and sarsen. A message that would outlast the storms, outlast the rain, outlast even their own memory. And still across the quiet of time, the question lingers, what if? Perhaps they were not alone. Perhaps they were part of a wider story, a network of civilizations that touched the earth long before our history books begin. Perhaps they travelled, traded, shared knowledge, passed along techniques. Perhaps other circles of stone scattered across Britain and beyond are fragments of this greater tapestry. What if Stonehenge is not only a monument, but a clue that whispers, There is more. There has always been more. And yet, in the silence, another thought arises. What if the builders did not mean for us to understand? What if the mystery itself is the gift? What if Stonehenge was never about answers, but about questions? A reminder that not everything can be known, not everything can be explained, not everything must be solved. The stones simply stand, silent, present, eternal. And in their silence they invite us to slow down, to breathe, to wonder. What if that is enough? The night grows deeper, the stars shine brighter, the air is cool and still, and the stones rise before us as they have risen for millennia. You run your hand across one of them, you feel the roughness, the coldness, the strength, and suddenly the distance between then and now dissolves. You are not just a visitor in the present. You are part of a chain stretching across the centuries, linked to those who first raised these stones, linked to those who will gaze upon them long after you are gone. What if Stonehenge was built by a forgotten people, but also for us? For us to remember that we too are small beneath the stars, that we too will pass, that our empires, our machines, our names will fade. But perhaps, like them, we might leave behind something that whispers to the future, we were here. And as this thought deepens, as the stillness settles upon you, you realize the stones are not only questions, they are also mirrors, mirrors of our own longing, our own curiosity, our own search for meaning. And so the question rises again softly, like a prayer breathed into the night. What if? What if there were once people who walked this land whose names are forgotten, whose voices are silent, yet whose dream was so powerful that it still stands in stone today? What if? Let the question remain. Let it echo. Let it carry you deeper, not toward answers, but toward wonder. Because sometimes it is not the answer that matters, it is the asking. And so, as we stand in the quiet of Stonehenge, with the stars opening above and the stones steady beneath, we return again to the anchor of our journey. And still, across the quiet of time, the question lingers. What if? Take another slow breath. Let the air fill your lungs. Let it out gently. Notice how your body grows heavier, how the silence grows deeper, how your mind opens wider. Now, imagine stepping closer to the stones. Each one towers above you, its surface rough, its weight immeasurable. You reach out and your fingertips brush against its cool, weathered face. In that touch you feel not just stone, but just time itself. And as your eyes close, something remarkable begins to happen. The present dissolves. The sound of the modern world fades away. No engines, no voices, no electricity. Only the earth, the wind, the sky, and the stones. You have stepped backward, not in a sudden leap, but in a slow drift, as though time itself is carrying you like a river carries a leaf. When you open your eyes, the world is different. The grass is shorter, wilder. The plain is empty, untouched by roads or fences. The air smells of wood smoke, of damp soil, of open fires burning in the distance. You hear the bleating of animals, the laughter of children, the low hum of voices, and there, before you, are the people, not in books, not in theory, but alive, moving, breathing, forgotten by history, yet present in this moment of imagination. They walk with confidence, their feet sure upon the earth. Their clothing is simple, woven from wool stitched from leather, decorated perhaps with beads and shells. Their hair is long, braided or tied. Their faces are painted with earth or ash, marked with signs that mean something to them, though not to us. They are gathered around the stones. Some are pulling ropes, their muscles taut, their voices rising in rhythm. Some are shaping wood into rollers, levers and sledges. Some are tending fires, carrying food, watching children. And some, the elders, the dreamers, the visionaries, stand apart, eyes fixed on the horizon, as if measuring the sun with their gaze. This is their work. This is their life. This is their prayer. And you are here, standing among them. They do not see you, not quite. You're only a whisper, a memory carried on the wind. but still you are present, walking softly among them, seeing what history has hidden. Imagine the sound, the creak of wood as rollers turn beneath the weight of stone, the chant of voices, steady, rhythmic, calling strength into the air, the thud of ropes tightening, the groan of a great block shifting inch by inch, the laughter of children imitating the workers, tugging at small stones of their own, the sharp crack of firewood breaking in the flames. And then silence, a pause. The stone has reached its pit. The workers stand back, breathing heavily. Ropes are tied, levers are paid. With one final surge of effort, the stone tilts, rises, and falls into its place. A cheer erupts, not loud but deep. A sound of triumph, of relief, of reverence. Another stone has joined the circle, and you, watching from the edge, feel the power of the moment. For this is not just construction. This is ceremony. This is devotion. The people gather around the new stone. Some touch it with their hands. Some press their foreheads against it. Some lift their voices in song, a low, haunting melody that carries across the plain. The children are quiet now, sensing the importance of the moment. The fire crackles, the sky darkens. The stars appear one by one as the circle grows. And still, the question lingers. What if these are not the people we think we know? What if they are not the farmers and herders described in books, but something more? What if they carry knowledge passed down from an even older world, a world lost to flood, to fire, to silence? What if their ancestors once walked with other forgotten civilizations, sharing wisdom, sharing vision, sharing the dream of eternity? What if Stonehenge is not the beginning of the story, but the end of it, the last echo of a civilization already fading? You close your eyes again, the chant of voices grows louder, the firelight flickers against your eyelids, and suddenly you are elsewhere. You're walking through a forest, ancient and vast. The trees rise tall above you, their branches heavy with leaves. A river flows nearby, its waters shining in the moonlight. On its banks, people gather. The same people, or perhaps their ancestors. They carve small stones, shaping them into circles, testing, learning. They measure the shadows of the sun with sticks planted in the earth. They watch the stars, memorizing their patterns, seeing the great wheel of the heavens turn above them. These are the first dreamers of stone, and their dream grows. Generations pass, children grow into elders, the small circles of stone become larger, the wooden posts become gateways, the rivers become roads for hauling, the dream becomes reality, until at last the great circle is raised on the plain, and you are there, drifting through time, watching it all unfold. Imagine the final ceremony. The circle is complete, the fires burn high, the people gather in silence, thousands of them drawn from miles around. The air is filled with the smell of smoke, of food, of earth. The elders step forward, raising their hands to the sky. The sun sets, and as it does, its light passes perfectly through the stones, flooding the circle with golden fire. A collective breath is drawn. A murmur rises, for in that moment heaven and earth are aligned. The stones have captured the sun, and still the builders remain nameless. Their voices vanish. Their stories are swallowed by time. Only the stones endure. And so the question echoes again. What if? What if Stonehenge is the memory of a people who are otherwise forgotten? What if these stones are not only markers of the sun, but markers of existence itself? A declaration that we were here, that we dreamed, that we reached for eternity. What if? Pause again. Breathe. Let the vision fade. The fires dim. The voices grow distant. The forest dissolves. You return slowly to the present. The mist drifts once more across the plain. The stars shine cold above. The stones stand silent before you. And yet, something lingers. The sense of presence, the echo of voices, the weight of memory. The forgotten people are gone, but the stones remain. And you too remain, listening, wondering. And still, across the quiet of time, the question lingers. What if? The circle of Stonehenge does not stand alone. It rises on the plains of England, yes, But when we take a step back, when we look with wider eyes, we see that it belongs to a much larger story. A story not only of one field, one monument, or one people, but of humanity itself. Because across the world, across the span of ages, stones rise. Monuments are built, temples are shaped, towers stretch toward the sky. And everywhere one question lingers. Why? Consider Egypt. Far to the south, on the banks of the Nile, the pyramids rise, vast mountains of stone aligned with the stars, filled with chambers that still puzzle the mind. They too were built thousands of years ago. They too whisper of forgotten hands, of knowledge older than we imagine. And they too stand as voices of people whose names are not all remembered. Consider Mesopotamia. In the valleys of the Tigris and Euphrates, great ziggurats rose, stepped pyramids of mud, brick, reaching toward the heavens. They too were aligned with stars dedicated to gods built to endure. They too remind us that human beings have always looked upward, have always sought meaning beyond the earth. Consider the Indus Valley, cities of brick carefully planned, with streets that ran straight, with drains and wells, with order and design, a civilization that thrived, then vanished. Its script remains undeciphered. Its people remain a mystery. And yet, like Stonehenge, they remind us that knowledge can be lost, that memory can fade, that time is stronger than empire. And still across the world, echoes appear. Circles of stone in distant lands, monoliths rising from islands, temples carved into cliffs, silent cities swallowed by jungles, all speak the same language, a language of endurance, of longing, of eternity. And so we return to Stonehenge. What if it is not only a local monument, not only the creation of one small group of farmers or tribes, but part of this wider human dream? What if it is a thread in a tapestry that stretches from Egypt to Mesopotamia, from the Indus to the Andes, from forgotten forests to silent deserts? What if humanity has always carried this longing, the longing to leave behind something that endures, something that speaks even when the builders are gone? And here, in this moment of reflection, we remember, all things rise and all things fall. Civilizations flourish, then vanish, names are written, then erased, but stones and stones remain. And in this we find a deeper truth. The Quran reminds us that nations come and go, that people rise in pride and are brought low, that the earth itself bears witness to their passing. How many generations we destroyed before them, the verse says. Can you find a single one of them, or hear from them a whisper? Perhaps Stonehenge is such a whisper from a people lost, a whisper from a nation forgotten, a whisper that tells us, we too were here, and so the stones humble us, because they remind us that nothing lasts forever. Not kings, not kingdoms, not cities of gold, not even memory. Only the Creator endures, only Allah remains, and all else returns to dust. Yet even in dust there is beauty. Even in silence there is wonder. Even in ruins there is a lesson. And so, as you listen, remember this, us. You too are part of the same story. You too walk upon the same earth. You too look up at the same stars. The people of Stonehenge are gone, but you remain. And someday others will come after you asking the same questions, feeling the same wonder, searching the same silence. And still, across the quiet of time, the question lingers. What if? What if Stonehenge is not only about them, but also about us? What if it is not only a memory of a forgotten people, but a mirror held up to our own lives? Because one day we too will be forgotten. Our names will fade. Our cities will crumble. Our voices will fall sans. But perhaps something we do, something we build, something we dream will endure. Not forever, but long enough to whisper to those who come after. Stonehenge is such a whisper from the deep past, a whisper that travels across centuries, a whisper that humbles us, quiets us, draws us into reflection. And in that whisper, we hear not only the question of history, but the lesson of eternity, that everything passes, that time is vast, that we are only travellers, and yet travellers who wonder, travellers who dream, travellers who ask the timeless question, what if? The stones stand and the silence deepens. We have walked far together tonight, from the windswept fields of England to the mysteries of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley, to the vast currents of history itself. And now, as the journey nears its quiet turning point, it is time to pause, to reflect, to listen, not only to the stones, but to what they awaken within us, because every mystery is also a mirror. When we gaze upon Stonehenge, we are not only asking about them, the builders, the forgotten people, the vanished lives, we are also asking about ourselves. Who are we in this story? What mark are we leaving? What whispers will we leave behind when we too have returned to the soil? What if Stonehenge was built by a forgotten people? It humbles us. It reminds us that even the greatest works can fade into silence, that even the strongest empires can fall into dust, that memory is fragile, and time is stronger than pride. And yet, there is also beauty here, because the stones have endured, not perfectly, not completely, but enough to remind us that those people existed, enough to remind us that their dreams were real, enough to remind us that nothing is truly lost while something still remains. So what lesson do we take? Perhaps this, that life is short and we must live it with care, that curiosity is eternal and we must nurture it gently, that humility before history is not weakness but wisdom. Imagine for a moment one of the builders of Stonehenge, a man or perhaps a woman. They are nameless now, their language is gone and their family line forgotten, and yet, through the stones, through the monument they helped raise, we remember them still. We walk among their work. We touch the stone they touched. We breathe the air around their circle. And in some way, across thousands of years, we meet them. Isn't that beautiful? That a life, however fleeting, can still echo. That an action, however ordinary in its time, can still matter centuries later. And so, listener, so can yours. You may never build a monument of stone. You may never carve your name into history books. But the kindness you show, the words you speak, the faith you hold, these too can echo. They too can ripple forward into the lives of others, into the generations that follow. Perhaps unseen, perhaps unremembered by name, but never lost, because nothing done with sincerity is wasted. Stonehenge, then, is both mystery and reminder. Mystery because we do not know who built it or why. Reminder because it tells us that people once lived, once dreamed, once sought to reach beyond themselves, and still across the quiet of time the question lingers, what if? What if you too are part of this same flow of time? What if your life, like theirs, is a whisper in eternity? What if your choices, your actions, your small kindnesses are stones in their own way, markers that remain after you are gone? In the Quran, we are told that every deed is recorded, that nothing escapes the knowledge of the Creator, that even when human memory fails, divine memory holds firm. In this way, no one is truly forgotten, not the people of Stonehenge, not you, not me. And yet, on this earth, memory fades, names vanish, stories dissolve. The circle of life turns endlessly. And so we learn humility. We learn that we are not the centre of the story, but only travellers within it. Travellers who wonder, travellers who seek, travellers who are invited in quiet moments like this to reflect. So as you lie here now, listening, breathing, drifting toward rest, let yourself feel the weight of time. Feel how vast it is. Feel how small we are within it. And let that smallness not bring fear, but peace. Because to be small is to be free. To be small is to know that we are part of something greater. The stones of Stonehenge stand, but so does the sky above them, the grass around them, the wind that moves between them. All is connected, all is part of the same flow, and so are we. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson of all, that life is not about permanence, but about presence, not about lasting forever, but about living well while we are here. And still, across the quiet of time, the question lingers, what if? What if we remembered that lesson more often? What if we lived with greater humility, greater kindness, greater curiosity? What if in our brief moment under the sun, We chose to live as if everything we do matters, because it does. The people of Stonehenge are gone, their voices are silent, but their stones remain. You too will one day be gone, but what will remain of you? What whispers will you leave behind? That is the reflection, that is the gift of this mystery. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, let these thoughts settle softly, like leaves falling onto still water. Let them ripple gently through your mind, not as burdens, but as blessings. You are part of history. You are part of eternity. You are part of the same story that carried the forgotten people, that carried the builders of Stonehenge, that carries all of us. And when you wake tomorrow, perhaps you will carry a little more wonder, a little more humility, a little more peace, because the stones whisper still. And the question remains, what if? And so we come to the end of our quiet journey tonight. From the first question, what if Stonehenge was built by a forgotten people, to the long wandering through history, imagination and reflection, we have walked slowly, softly, step by step. Together we stood in the circle of stones. Together we felt the silence of time. Together we wondered. And now, like travellers reaching the end of a road, it is time to rest. So let your body relax. Feel the weight of the day sinking away. Let your breath become slower, gentler. Let your thoughts soften like clouds drifting across a night sky. The stones remain. They have stood for thousands of years. They will stand for thousands more. But you're free to rest. You do not need to carry the mystery any longer. You can set it down. You can let the stones keep their silence while you drift into yours. And as you rest, remember this. You are part of the story too. You with your own journey, your own quiet mark upon the earth. You may not be remembered in stones. You may not be written in books. But your life matters. Your presence matters. Your kindness matters. And in the end, that is what endures. And still, across the quiet of time, the question lingers. What if? What if the truth of Stonehenge is greater than we imagine? What if the forgotten people were not truly lost, but remembered in every whisper of wind, every ray of sunlight that touches those stones? And what if in your own life, you too are remembered in ways unseen in the lives you touch, in the prayers that remain after you, in the echoes of your choices? Let these thoughts drift like gentle waves. No need to hold them tightly, no need to solve the mystery. Just let the wonder carry you like a boat floating down a quiet river at night. And now, let the river slow, let the current fade, let yourself come to stillness, like sand settling after a long day's wind. Let your thoughts settle into rest, like leaves falling upon still water. Let your worries fade into silence. Like the forgotten people themselves, let your footsteps dissolve into the vastness of time, leaving only peace behind. And if, when you wake, you still wonder, that is good, that is beautiful, because wonder keeps the heart alive, wonder keeps the spirit soft, wonder keeps us humble before the mysteries of creation. So thank you, dear traveller, for walking this road with me tonight. Thank you for listening, for wondering, for dreaming. Thank you for being the part of this quiet journey. And if you wish to walk again, to wander into more mysteries, to explore more forgotten worlds, to listen again to the whispers of time when you are welcome, you may subscribe, you may follow, you may simply return whenever you need. There will always be another path, another story, another question waiting. But for now, rest, sleep, let your heart be at ease, and as you drift, as the last threads of thought dissolve, let this question remain with you, soft and gentle, like a lullaby carried by the wind. What if?